Welcome to APCUG's Saturday Safari, where we go on an expedition deep into the jungles of technology and learn more. Today we've got kind of a technology, yes, because of computer software, but this is a very timely topic for many of us. I was reminded that those who attend from the British Commonwealth countries of Canada and Australia probably don't have an interest in our topic today, and we understand that. But many of us here in the States, this is something that is very important because we have a time limit and everything else. Tom Burt is with us today. He is from the Sun City Summerlin Computer Club out west, and he's done this locally, and we've asked him to do it for all of us. So he is going to take us through some of the tax software, and then he's going to do a mock-up of pretty much of a standard filing that would be of interest to most of us. So Tom, I'm going to turn things over to you and educate us on tax filing.
Okay, thank you, John. Once again, I'll just click share screen.
Yep.
Okay, here we go. All right, and I was pleased. We have over 100 people here. That's quite a crowd. So welcome to all of you. It's nice to be here. Thanks to John and Judy for inviting me. I gave this seminar just about a week ago to our Sun City Summerlin Computer Club. And so it's still fresh in my mind, which is a happy thing. So let's go dive in. There we go. Yeah, we were just talking about, I have to move this down a bit. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Would you please turn it into a slideshow?
How do you mean, Judy?
So we don't see all the buttons all the way around.
Full screen if you can.
Oh, this is a PDF, Judy. I need buttons. I need the buttons to navigate. So
yeah, can you go to full screen though? Maximize.
Well, then let's try it and see what happens. Be a little bit bigger.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, my buttons, as long as I can get at these, it's okay. All right, here we go. So basically what we're going to do today, fairly brief introduction. I'll talk a little bit about TurboTax and its versions and features. Do the same thing for H&R Block. These are the two main consumer tax programs that people use. There is another one called Tax Cut, but I haven't had much experience with it. So we'll lay out, I have a sample couple, retired couple, since I live in a retirement community. And we'll kind of look at their income and expense picture. And then I'm going to basically spend some time, step by step, we'll go through completing a tax return for them. And I'll start one, and then I've already got one that's all finished. And we'll walk through that because you don't want to sit here watching me type for much of an hour. After we get through that, I've got a few links we can refer to if there's time. And I've got a little bit of material, the tax rates for 2023 and the tax rates upcoming for 2024. Many of us retirees are getting income that isn't subject to withholding. And so you wind up doing estimated taxes quite a bit. And in fact, one of the things I'll cover is in this is the IRS's EFTPS, Electronic Federal Tax Payment System. If you haven't signed up and got that set up, it's a good thing to do. I'll cover that when we get there. All right, so few things to know. This is about tax software programs. Along the way, I talk a lot about taxes, but don't rely on me for tax advice. I'm not licensed. I don't have any kind of certificate. And please don't rely on me to correctly interpret the U.S. tax laws. I don't think anybody these days can probably do that except some of the extreme tax experts. So as I said, we'll look at TurboTax and also at H&R Block. And then we'll dig into H&R Block Deluxe is the version I use for this. And as I said, we'll use a model senior couple. As far as benefits of tax software programs, why not just take the shoebox over to your accountant, throw it on his desk and say, call me when it's done. Many people do that. Using these is quite easy. They both, TurboTax and H&R Block, have an interview model where you start at the beginning and it just goes through step by step, asks you a lot of questions. You provide the data, and the program fills in all the tax forms as it goes. Both of them have, if you're really, the old-fashioned, you like to hand fill in all those little boxes on the forms. They have that all set up electronically too. And the interview mode and the forms mode link back and forth to each other. So that can be handy here and there. If you own, say, some gas partnerships or a real estate investment trust, you get these K1 forms, and some of those, the interview simply isn't equipped to handle all the variations on those. So then you may go to forms entry. Nice thing about both programs, they will import the data from your previous year's tax return. And they can go back and forth. H&R Block will import from TurboTax, and TurboTax imports from H&R Block. So you can switch from one to the other. Generally, though, you're going to want to get good with one and stay with it. They can go get financial data from your various providers. And they can also import from Quicken if you use that. Nice thing about these programs as compared to doing it on paper is they instantly recalculate. Every time you make any kind of a change, the whole return recalculates. And that can be very nice. I'm sure some of us have had the experience. You get the 1099s from your broker about mid-February. You put all that data in, and then about a month later, here comes a revised 1099 from your broker. And they've recategorized dividends or something like that. And suddenly, it may not be a big change, but you got, basically to put that in. And many of the calculations in a return depend on your adjusted gross income. And if that changes, then basically you've got to sit there and recalculate everything. These programs do that all automatically. The programs know and follow the latest tax rules, which is a good thing. You may think you know the tax rules, but the Congress lately has this pattern that they quite late in the year pass laws that may ripple back sometimes and affect what's going on in the current year as well as going forward. There's a lot of error checking in these programs, both of them. That's good. Picks up, you won't have any arithmetic mistakes. They look for a lot of other things, though, missing items and stuff like that. At the end, both of them do a review and tell you how likely it is that you'll get an audit. Have you done something a little risky? May not mean it's not correct. It's just they're alerting you. make sure you've got backup for things if your audit risk is high. The other nice thing is these programs will take care of electronic filing. It's really far and away the best way to file these days. And the connection, when you're ready to do that, you fill in some information, click a button, and then the tax return is sent up to the IRS through an encrypted connection between your PC and the IRS web servers. So it's all very secure. And many of you live in states that have income taxes. I'm fortunate living in Las Vegas that we don't have a state income tax in Nevada, but if you do need to do state income taxes, both these programs have all the states. You buy them for extra money, or you can buy combo packages where the federal and the state are bundled. That's generally more affordable. But all the data that went into the federal return can be then imported into the state return as well. So you save yourself a lot of data entry. And all of the other benefits from up here, it's the same setup, interview. And all right, and when you're done, or well, let's say the last thing, compared to dealing with tax person, a preparer, when you do it with one of these programs, your tax filing is completely private. That may be important to you, but at the very least, everything is there. It's all on your own PC, and you immediately have all of the records for this year's tax return in electronic form. You can back them up easily to a flash drive or a CD or a DVD. So basically that's some of the main benefits. All right, let's talk. I'm not going to go to the website just in the interest of saving time. I've listed here the versions of TurboTax, and there's a free version that's pretty simple. It won't really handle most returns. Then there's basic. Deluxe takes care of homeowner and mortgage deductions and things like that. Premier, they add in Schedule D stuff, stocks, bonds, other investments, capital gains. They also handle rentals if you own an income property, something like that. If you're running an actual Schedule C business, meaning maybe a consulting thing, or you're running an eBay storefront, something like that, you have to have the TurboTax Home and Business Edition. That's the only one that handles Schedule C and some of the other. And then you get beyond that, there's corporate stuff that may come into play. Now, most of these versions can also be accessed on the web. There are web versions of them. You can do your return in a sort of free trial mode. And if you decide to print the return out or file it electronically, then you have to pay. And I much prefer to go ahead and be the old-fashioned way. I get the desktop version of the software, download it, install it, and then do all my tax work from there. All right, so a few key features, and we'll see it's almost identical between TurboTax and H&R Block now. They have the interview, you put in personal information, your income, some expense stuff. If you can put that in, and then it'll decide whether you're better off using the itemized deductions or the standard deduction. And when we get to my fictitious couple, talk about that a little bit more. But certainly, it's a good idea to put your expenses in, even if you're going to use the standard, because then you have a record of all of them. And a lot of that information carries forward from year to year. You may have credits, you may have made estimated tax payments, things like that. You put all that in. As I said, it has a forms mode. You can go in and directly enter data. There's a nice tax summary window you can call up. A lot of help. If you're not sure about something, there's almost always a bullet you can click to pop open a description of what something is. And they have a deduction finder in Deluxe and above, which is helpful if you may not, especially if you're sort of a novice to this, can help you find deductions you might not otherwise have thought of. And then, of course, when you're all done, you can print the return out for your filing, for records, whatever. It's a good idea to have a printed copy. Every now and then you're applying for credit, you might need to provide a copy of the last year's tax return there. And then they do the electronic filing for you in the state tax return. On states, for TurboTax, e-files an extra cost for whatever that's worth. All right, let's compare. Here's H&R Block. And I'll be out of my bullet slides pretty quick here. So again, they have a free for simple returns, basic, deluxe. Now, here's where it somewhat differs. The H&R Block Deluxe does stocks, does rentals, it does Schedule C businesses, interest, dividends. It's basically, this is the program that probably will do everything for you. They have a premium edition that gives you more help if you're running a business. But I have found for simple businesses, the deluxe version's all you need. And then they have a premium in business, which is really more aimed at corporate returns. So a little bit difference there. Just so you have I don't know, TurboTax, the home and business is fairly expensive, about $110, maybe you catch a sale. Turbo H&R Block Deluxe on their website, I checked recently, I think it was $35. You might catch a sale on Amazon or one of the big box stores might be selling it a little cheap. H&R Block also is now offering an online assist. They call it an AI-based service. So I haven't partaken of that, but I'm just getting started with my own taxes. So, okay, nobody's asked any questions yet. I guess we're good. All right. And once again, on H&R Block, it's very much the same. Personal information in, put your income in, your expenses. This is all in the interview. Credits, estimated tax payments, and so on. They've got the forms mode. They have a tax summary report window. Lots of help. You can print your return, you can e-file, and they have state returns. So it comes down to really whose screens do you like better as to what you can do with this. So here's my fictitious couple. John and Mary Smith. This is the income side, and then I've got a slide here for their deductions. Let me go back up here. So now again, these are they're not real people, obviously. John is 73, Mary is 71. They file a joint return. John has some wages. He works here in Sun City as a fitness monitor. That's a part-time job, couple of, maybe 2 days a week. Mary doesn't work for a wage, but she runs a little eBay storefront, and she sells dolls that she sews up herself, kind of like Raggedy Ann dolls. They both get Social Security. They've got some interest from Bank of America, from a CD. They get some dividends from Charles Schwab, let's say. Realistically, most people, if they're into the stock market, might have more than one sale, but I just put one in. These numbers actually are correct as of those dates. So they sold 200 shares of IBM. Because they're over 70, lately it's over 72, but they date back. Anyway, they've got IRA accounts, and they're of an age where they have to take required minimum distributions. And they also have Roth accounts, and they're converting some of their IRAs to Roths. This all turns into taxable income. But the Roth conversions add a little wrinkle to it. So that's something we'll touch on as we go. Because Mary's running a Schedule C business, she gets to deduct 20% of that. So that's her qualified business income deduction, $468. These days, if you're not itemizing, your charitable contributions are not deductible. 2021, they were. There was one year the IRS enabled that, or the Congress did, really. The other thing, we'll touch on this as we get in there. They each make qualified charitable donations. And this is a way to subtract donations to charity from your adjusted gross income. So it is a way to make charitable deductions deductible. Let's say charitable contributions deductible is what I'm saying. And this goes back, they took required minimum distributions. And if you're making the contribution directly from a qualified account, an IRA, a 401k, you can have the broker send actually you haven't cut the check directly to the charity, mail it to you, and then you send it to the charity. It can be more than one. So it's an interesting wrinkle, but you have to be old enough to take deductions from your IRA, meaning 59 and a half. All right, they both have Medicare Part B insurance, so they're over 65. They both have health insurance from Humana, but there are no premiums in the HMO plan, so nothing to deduct there. They do have healthcare expenses, and those would be deductible. They pay property tax. They both have long-term care insurance. And see, all of this is deductible, but we won't really directly see it. Healthcare expenses are subject to a 10% of AGI exclusion. If you don't know that, that's just one of those things. So you have to have pretty high healthcare expenses before typically they're deductible. Last thing in their expense picture is car license fees. And they've each got a car. More and more people are finding one car is enough for one car and a golf cart here in Sun City especially. But we'll put those in. What's going to happen is none of this adds up to the standard deduction. So in the end, when they file, it'll be the standard deduction that gets used. All right, so the way we're going to do this, I'll outline this and then we'll just go through the steps. We're going to start a new return and import the prior year return and go through the personal interview and then all the income entry things and the expense entry things. We'll enter in, they did make estimated tax payments. Kind of then go through just a quick review, make sure we didn't miss anything, especially in the medical expense area. Run the final review, correct any issues that the program finds, run the audit check, print the return for their own records. And as a point, I print mine to a PDF file, just so I don't have paper. It's much easier to find things on your hard drive than off in paper file cabinets. But you can take the PDF and print it out anytime you need a hard copy. Then e-file, which since this is a fictitious couple, we won't be able to get too far into that. And then I'll show you this or talk about the EFTPS website. Because if you owe money, then you go to EFTPS and make the payment there. All right, and I'll save that till later. Let's go over to H&R Block. So I brought it up. Unfortunately, I scaled up my screen fonts, but it looks like H&R Block isn't honoring that. The fonts, I hope you can see that on your screen. What would happen if I hit, see the fonts don't get any bigger. Let's just go. So you started up, H&R Block checks for updates. There actually is one pending, but I didn't want to run it today. Law of demos. Never do updates to things on the day that you're doing the demo. So anyway, you would start in, and the first thing is to see, I've got one going, but let's go ahead and click Start a Return. And it says, how do you want to import from last year? All right, so I'm going to use last year's return. And it found it. Since I've done this before, it knows where this is. Notice the little ending there is .t22. And each year, at least H&R Block, it's .t in the last 2 digits of the year. So that's their 2022 return. Well, same story. I'm right in that same place. Okay, you might have to browse to find yours. All right, and let's say import selected file down here. And good news, it imported okay. Let's say next. We have to give it a name, and I don't want to change the one that I finished, so I'm going to put demo in here, just so that this one, as I said, we're going to start it and do a little bit, and then go over to the one that I've completely finished. All right. And up in the corner here, the name of the file you're working on shows up, so you know where you are. All right, and I'm not going to do an import from financial software. You can, but I haven't been keeping my quick enough. So we've got all that. Didn't serve in the military. You could check that box and it would change the interview. A lot of this is that. So what's your filing status? Married, filing jointly. You would pick the right one for your situation there. So here's the information about John and Mary. And as I said, you see his occupation's fitness monitor. Those are not real social security numbers. Date of birth and so on. And then here's Mary, same thing. Their home address, and this is not a real address either. But so then down at the bottom, when we got all this in, we hit next. What state of residency? Now, Nevada doesn't have a income tax, as I said. If you're in California, New York, New Jersey, Minnesota, Michigan, quite a few other states, then you would put those in. You might have a rare situation where you owe tax to more than one state. That can happen if you work, like part year in, say, California, and then part year maybe Oregon, I don't know, something like that. More and more people are working remotely, so these multi-state deals tend to come up. All right. So they know I don't. So anyway, I can skip all of the state and local income tax screens. All right, and then there's all these check boxes. Some of these may apply. Anyway, none of them did to John and Mary. So here we go. Do we agree? Blah, blah, blah. You agree to share your deed, we can provide anyway. I think, is there a scroll bar here? No, okay. I want to say no thanks on all of this. So John and Mary are retired. They don't have any dependents living with them. We can skip that. All right, let's work on your income. Now they'll try to upsell you to the premium at this point. Just say no thanks. So common items, you check the wages, interest income, dividends, or capital gains. That's basically all that applies there. And then at this point, I'm getting pretty close to where I'll cut over. Update your W-2s. So John, because he works for the association as a fitness monitor, does have a W-2. You would click edit here and enter them myself, and then they basically give you the form to fill in, and most of that data is in there. His wages and tax withheld and so on. So this is a good point. Let me come over here, and I'm going to say open a saved return. And I'm not going to save, well, I'll go ahead and save this. But I want to basically now pick up the finished return. All right, and since we were at the end of that, let me come back. There's our tax summary. Let me come back here, and we'll go back to wages W-2 and see this one is all filled in.
Tom?
Yeah, go ahead, Judy.
Okay, this is for John Kennedy. Did you read what I just sent you?
And I sent to everybody.
Oh, you sent it to everybody, but so many people don't check the chat.
Yeah, I don't have the chat up, and I'm running kind of full screen here.
Well, no, it was to tell everybody how to make your slides information larger.
Well, they can zoom.
They can go up to view options and choose 100%, and it's fantastic.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah, who knew?
We learn something every day with this. I'm pretty good with Zoom, but some of these features are still lost for me.
Yeah, for us, you're moving back and forth with your slide, but I'd rather have that than not be able to see.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm finished.
All right, sorry. That's fine. Let's again, I'm not going to type a lot of stuff in. The W-2 form, you put in your wages. Yeah, these are just boxes on the W-2. So you're just typing the data in. It's possible to import these, but I'm finding generally it's easier to just type most of this in. Do any of these special things apply? No. All right, so we're finished with his W-2. Bank interest, once again, you would, if you have a new one, let's say you open a new bank account, you would hit this plus enter manually first time, or you could try to import it again if you log into your bank and possibly get it that way. Here we just have one, and it's came on a 1099 int. who the payer was. You don't have to put real account numbers in here. Just put something that helps you know what it is. Anyway, interest income was 241. There really weren't any. See all these complicated little, did they withhold income tax? Was it a foreign bank account? All these things that make the tax law so complicated. But anyway, fill in whatever boxes are on the 1099 to match that, and then you're finished there. All right, dividends, they had their account at Schwab. Let's take a look at that. Now, again, if you had another brokerage account, you would start enter manually. So maybe you've got something at Fidelity or E-Trade, you know, put all that stuff in. And then each one's going to send you a 1099. So you come up here, enter the amounts. So they had ordinary dividends, qualified dividends. The difference here, qualified dividends are basically actual stock dividends. Ordinary dividends, you might have an ETF that buys bonds. Most of the dividends from one of those are actually going to be interest. So they're non-qualified, meaning they're not given favorable tax treatment. It's all ordinary income. Just so for knowing the sake of knowing the distinction. Might be some capital gains. You put those in. They're again treated favorably. So then we get down. There are a whole bunch of other 1250 gains. Was some of it foreign? Did they withhold any tax? On and on and on. It's just all these possibilities in the 1099. Your broker happily figures all this out for you. So all you have to do is type the data in.
How do you enter your savings bond sale interest? No 1099 cent.
This would be because you bought it and then you eventually redeem it. So the interest is accrued over time, right? And I guess you pay it all when you redeem it. You may depend on whether you're cash method or accrual method, but I would think you just take the difference between the redemption price and what you paid for it when you bought it. And the question then is it a cap gain or is it ordinary interest? I don't know. There's a, let's see. I don't want to get way off in the weeds. Let me go back. Well, see, these are dividends. Tell you what, we got to go back here. This is a nice thing. You might as well see this. Something like that comes up. You don't get a 1099 int. Okay, so well, let's try. We can just make one up. Interest reported on seller other interest. I think that's what you, at the worst, you could click that. Because you're not getting any kind of a 1099. So let's see what happens. All right. Interest paid by U.S. Treasury, I guess, right? Anyway, so what would it be? How big was the bond, Judy?
He didn't say. Choose number 3 up there. Interest on U.S. savings bonds and Treasury obligations. Is that it?
Yeah, that would work. All right, well, let's say it was $250 just to have a number. Okay. So it looks like that's how you would do it. Then you have all the same questions, you know, was it tax exempt and so on, but you have to know the rules. But it's easy enough to find the spot and put it in. All right, so And there we are.
Cool, thank you.
Okay. I've never done that, so making it up as we go. All right, anyway, the dividends and distributions, we handled that. All right. So here's the business that Mary runs. Let's take a quick look at how that looks. So it's Mary Smith's Doll Shop. And there's all the usual stuff. It's an online retail trade. There are business codes. If you click, you can look these up. I forget how I found that. It's actually a real code. All right. So questions there again. She had no employees. It's a sole proprietorship thing. She didn't pay anybody big money, so no 1099s that she had to send in. That's a point to know. If you're running a business and you say contract with somebody and pay them $600 or more, you have to file a 1099 reporting that payment to your consultant or contractor, whatever it was. Mary filed anyway. She didn't have any, so she's not a minister. All right. She uses cash accounting method. She certainly materially participated. So let's look at the income. No income on 1099s. So no 1099 miss. We'll eventually get here. For receipts for sales, basically. So total receipts in 2975. That's what we had. No pater income, patronage. No other business income. So again, it's a pretty simple thing. Returns and allowances, she charges $20 a doll. So $3 came back for whatever reason. And so that goes in there. She had inventory. She makes a few of these ahead. Cost value on the inventory, yes. Didn't change it. Cost of goods sold, $245 was what she had at the beginning of the year. And here's sort of a summary. So her gross income was $2670. All right, let's find out about her business expenses. And even though she works out of the house, it's really a hassle declaring part of your house as an office or something like that, because you have to depreciate that then, and it makes the bookkeeping incredibly complex. You know, if you're really a small business, it just isn't worth the hassle. Ditto for the vehicle. And she had no depreciable property. She might have a sewing machine. But biggest expense is commissions and fees. If you run an eBay storefront, they take a small percentage of your sales because they're providing all of the handling of the processing of the sale and everything. So she paid them $149. That's basically the whole deal. And so then we see that, and her net income, nothing there. She didn't. Okay. So her net profit is $25.21. Like many of these storefronts, it's marginal whether it's worth it. So the last year, they had some sale of stocks and bonds. And that was in their regular account. Now, that's not the profits. That's the total proceeds of the sale. So let's take a quick look at that. There it was, the IBM 200 shares that I mentioned. The gain or loss was 5,250. And it's like everything. So you report this date acquired, Date sold, it's more than a year, so it's going to be a long-term capital gain. Proceeds were $32,900. Cost basis was $27,650. These days, almost all the brokerage transactions on stocks are commission-free. So that's basically the price of 200 shares of the stock on the date that they bought it there. All right. And the basis was reported to the IRS. Most sales, that'll be the case. And if it wasn't, that won't be checked. You still have to put the data in here. No special type of, it's not a wash sale kind of a situation. Sometimes you sell and buy back. You have to be careful not to buy back within 30 days of the sale. If you sell at a loss. All right, so that's that. All right, 1099, yeah, that's just finishing up all of that. They did have retirement income and Social Security income. Let's take a little look at that. So once again, they each have an IRA account at Schwab. That's why there are two of these. And the first one is John's. And the front page is just who's the financial institution again, that stuff. And then basically your gross distribution, this was his RMD plus the Roth conversion that I mentioned. So total distribution was that. It's down here, there's usually a distribution code, normal distribution in this case, but you can drop that down. There's a slew of them there. Sometimes there's a secondary code. Put in whatever is on the 1099-R in this case. Because it's Nevada, there's no state tax issues again. So now they start asking you the questions. Is it an IRA simple? Yes, it came out of his IRA. That box was checked. Didn't inherit the IRA. Did not roll over any part of this, but as we'll see, did you convert your distribution? The answer is yes. That means you took part of it and put it into a Roth IRA. All right. And didn't convert the entire distribution. 7,500. Okay. Wasn't an HSA. Was it a qualified charitable distribution? This is what I was talking about. So yes, part, but not all of it was a QCD, qualified charitable donation. Okay. How much? 3,000 in John's case. Did any part of the IRA, was it after tax money? You know, usually IRAs, you contribute and deduct the whole contribution, or more likely these days you worked at a job and you had a 401k. And when you left that job, you roll the 401k over into an IRA. Well, that's all pre-tax money. So then you have no basis in your IRAs. If you were making after-tax contributions to the IRA, then you have to answer yes, and then it all gets into a proration formula. But in John's case, the answer was no. All right, so that ended it there. Mary's is about the same. I'm going to go faster here. Just a lot of clicking because there are many questions in these things. But again, it's from her IRA. She didn't inherit, didn't roll over, did convert, partial conversion, 5,000. I might have had those backwards as to which was John and Mary. It's okay. Basically, we did the same thing in both. All right. And again, no basis. So that's the whole story on their retirement withdrawals for this year. And the whole thing about converting to a Roth, mention that in passing, is once your assets are in a Roth, all the earnings, whether it's capital appreciation, dividends, interest, whatever, accumulate tax-free. There are no RMDs in a Roth, so you don't have to necessarily take the money out. It can continue to grow tax-free. Eventually, when you pass, which here in Sun City, we have to think about that. Eventually, your heirs, again, inherit a Roth IRA. It continues to be tax-free. They have 10 years to draw it down under the latest tax rules. So it's a fairly good way to pass assets. The idea is you don't take so much out that you push yourself up into a high bracket, but you sort of can do a staged conversion over time. The money is going to be taxed sooner or later. So, all right, just few other questions they have about these. Are you continuing? Generally, once you're retired, it doesn't make a lot of sense to keep contributing to a traditional IRA. All right, so that's the end. Same for the spouse. Okay. All right, so the next thing would be Social Security. There are the amounts. They get a 1099 SSA that has all this information in it. Wait a minute. Did I double click there? No, I guess not. Federal tax withheld was none because they pay estimated taxes anyway. Those are the Medicare premiums, which get deducted monthly for the whole year. And so that's a medical expense deduction, but they take it off the top. They didn't do lump sum. All right, property sales, there was nothing. If you sold real estate, it would be here. Let's see. Any other taxable income? Sometimes you get a jury duty, maybe. Here in Nevada, once you're over 70, you can avoid jury duty. Some people like to go, but going downtown here in Las Vegas is no fun. Hard to find parking, and you have to walk a long way. So, all right.
Comment?
Yes.
If one has multiple stock sales, he or she may group together the long-term, short-term, as well as covered, non-covered on the tax software.
That's true. They'll handle grouping the sales if that's what you want to do. Common case of that is you might have sold a large block and it gets broken up into sublots. And rather than report, and they may not all be at the same price. So you can group them together because your broker's reporting the sale to the IRS as well. So that saves you having dozens and dozens of these entries. So yeah, it's either TurboTax or H&R Block will support doing that if you want. Okay.
Yep. Can you file a trust return with either of these programs?
Oh, I don't know. Sorry.
Google.
It's most of my assets are in a family trust. And so when you have a trust, if you're the trustee, the income that comes to the trust is treated as if it was income to me. I file with my own Social Security number. But there are other types of trusts where I don't think that would be the case. Or my setup, once I pass on, the family trust will then be taken over by a commercial trustee and managed for the benefit of my heirs. And they would certainly be filing some kind of a business tax return for that. So I just don't know whether these programs would do it.
Thank you.
Google, right? Okay. Let me continue on. Most of these questions, again, you might have had some of this, but I left it out because, again, retirees, not so much. This is new. They want to know if you traded in cryptocurrency. They tell you what digital assets are here. If you did, it's kind of interesting. Again, if you're buying and selling, say, Bitcoin, I think they're treating the gains or losses as ordinary income. So even if you hold it for more than a year, it's kind of like holding gold, collectibles, things like that. They're anyway, if you were in that game, you would answer yes, and then flow on from there. I left it out just in the interest of simplicity here, because I don't want to run over time. No foreign bank accounts. And any final income items is, again, little stuff that might have showed up. All right. So here's the final picture. And essentially, we haven't showed the, that's the next thing I think that, all right, any adjustments, really didn't have any. Okay. So there was some self-employment tax for Mary, which becomes an adjustment. Basically, her self-employment tax is deductible. All right, and on and on. Now, the itemized deductions we saw, I'm not going to go through putting those in. They're there. Let's move on. Credits. You may have some of these. If you bought an EV, you might be able to claim a clean vehicle credit. Child tax credit, not so much here. Elderly and disabled, you might want to look at. Neither of them they're elderly, but they're not disabled. So let's see. Where do I want to go? I don't. Let's just go over to taxes. And here you may have, here's healthcare coverage. It was nagging at me before. Everyone in my household had health insurance. This was something that came out of Obamacare. The federal government now requires that everybody have some kind of healthcare insurance. John and Mary are on Medicare, so it's all basically a done deal. All right, let's hit next. Type of health insurance, check that box. All right, that's all you need to know. Next, okay. It's odd that they bury that under taxes. I was having a hard time finding that earlier. Okay, let's just go back here and look at federal tax payments, and then we'll kind of wrap this up. So they did make estimated tax payments. And what you do is, again, you put these in, the date you made the payment, the amount. These are the actual dates that these payments are due quarterly. They're not really even. June is a little bit early, and then January is a bit late. So John made $110. You know, I sort of made this up so it came out. See, federal tax owed $48. That's what you want, is to get to the end of all this and you don't owe very much. So anyway, put that in and it'll figure all that out. All right, and I think some of if you have a lot of dividend or cap gain income, it'll automatically figure out if there's alternative minimum tax. You can go in there and work through that. It'll typically alert you if you're subject to that. If you didn't make estimated payments or have enough withholding, you may get into a situation where it'll have an underpayment penalty due. And so, anyway, let's get out of there. They tell you how to avoid an underpayment penalty for the next year. And do any of these special situations apply? Not really. Okay. So then they want to get your driver's licenses. That's for e-filing, basically. Let's see if there was anything else in here that we care about. If you need a filing extension, this would be the place to do that. A lot of people wind up, either the date is not all in or they just don't get it done in time. You still have to have paid the amount due, but you can file an extension before you have to file the return. You may need to amend a return, current years or later. It might be, again, you've filed, and then the broker sends you the corrected 1099, and whoops, there's another $1,000 of income that you didn't report. You might have to go back and amend. All right. So let's hit over to finish. The accuracy review, we can look at that for a second. Just see how we play. Congratulations, no oversights or inaccuracies. That's what you want to see. Okay. So here's the final picture for them. They owe $48. All right. And then we get into don't need to deal with the state tax. It's doing the accuracy review. Okay. Maximum refund guaranteed. That's nice to know, but free, and so they're all right. So far, so good. Notice up here, the audit risk is way down in the low end, pretty risk-free. Filing, and then you get into the whole thing with printing your return, choosing e-file. Now I can come up, I'll demo a little bit of this, but you can go directly to the print. You can choose the bullet for official returns. It'll show you what forms that it's going to file. And then you can say print. Now, if you don't, the Windows has the Microsoft PDF printer. Oops. Well, it's printing a real one. It's not. Payment method. This is where, how do you want to pay? At this point, I would go to the EFTPS. So we're basically at the end of filing the return. Let me go back to my slides. I'll mention this, if your income is below $79,000 and it's pretty simple, you can go to this free file site on irs.gov. Over that, the IRS still has free online tax forms. They're fillable PDF forms. and they'll do basic math in those for you. So again, if your life is pretty simple, you can do that. I don't know, here in Sun City, the AARP every year has a program where we do assistance. People can come in and they train some of our residents who volunteer, and then those people help folks file their tax returns. So it's sort of free assistance. There are limits on that. Your return can't be super complicated. And people have to, the link is our community magazine. But anyway, that's for Sun City people. In your area, I don't know. Maybe you have the AARP program going if you live in a retirement community somewhere else. Okay, let me see. I think we're just about there. Let me click this. You can see, here's the website. I don't know, maybe you can see this, maybe you can't. It's kind of way over to the left side of the screen. But you need to set up an account. You can enroll online. After you've enrolled, I think they still mail you, US mail, a PIN number, which you need to have when you're going to log in. But once you're enrolled, it's gotten a little trickier. They now are doing two-factor authentication with ID.me. Just so you can see, I'll click Make a Payment. My problem is I've been trying to enroll with ID.me for about 3 weeks, and they want, for some reason at the end, they want to do a selfie to compare the face that your selfie camera sees to the face on your driver's license, and it's not working. So I haven't been able to get registered, but this is, if you click this, all right, and then see it's got all that stuff, but the next step would be it's going to try to text me something, and before it'll do that, ID.me wants to verify me. And right now I'm stuck. I can't get verified. So let me leave that. I can talk about this at least. So get on, once you're enrolled, again, the idea is you link a checking account to EFTPS, and then it's basically an electronic funds transfer. You go in there, you basically tell it how much you want to pay, which tax year it's for, what kind of payment it is. And it's very nice for doing your estimated taxes. But the other part of this is you get a receipt, and that receipt is an absolute guarantee proof of payment. As compared if you go down to the post office and do the registered letter thing, where you fill in the little green card that they're supposed to sign and mail back to you. You put your check in the envelope. If that gets lost anywhere en route, either the post office loses it or it gets to the IRS and they lose it, which does happen. As far as they're concerned, you didn't pay. You know, where the EFTPS, once they confirm the payment, it's a lock. You know, you have absolute proof that you paid. So then you avoid any issues with penalties for underpayment. I did learn the hard way, if you don't access the account for 6 months, you may have to reactivate it. So it's a good idea to log in at least once in a quarter. Other than that, this new two-factor authentication with ID.me is a bit of a hassle. Lately, what they've been telling, you know, ID.me sent me an email, said, we were unable to successfully authenticate you. You can do a video chat session and get registered. So I'm going to try that. sometime real soon. But all right, I think we're just about done. 1019. Why don't we, if you want to look into these, there's some interesting stuff here. One thing to be wary of a little bit, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that was passed first year of the Trump administration, which cut the tax rates and did a variety of other things. That law had sunsets in it, and it's going to basically expire December 31st, 2025. And if nothing happens between now and then to extend those cuts, we'll go back to the rates that were in effect prior to 2017. So this only matters if you're doing some longer term tax planning. You might be deciding again, how much money should I convert from my IRA to my Roth, and when should I do that? Well, tax rates are low now, so it's maybe a better time to be doing that. There's just no way to know what's going to happen, over the next 2 years. But anyway, I'll leave most of that you can go look at. The tax brackets for the current year are here. You can see down here the standard deduction is for a married filing jointly couple, $27,700. If each of them is over 65, it's another $3,000, $1,500 each. And if they're legally blind, then there's another $1,500. You notice for single filers, these numbers are a little different. And for a head of household, someone that's got dependents in the house, dependent children, but has lost a spouse, again, they've got a different standard deduction for them. Most of the numbers here in terms of the tax brackets are exactly double the single filer until you get up to the 35% bracket, and suddenly the top end of the 35% bracket is quite a bit less than double the single filer. And then everything above this number is taxed at 37%. So most seniors don't run into this, but it can get interesting as you get into these higher levels of income. Looking at 2024, they adjusted all these for inflation. And other than that, if you want to look these up, there's a link there to go see what's going on. And the new standard deduction is going to be 29.2 versus 27.7. That's, again, just reflective of the comparatively high inflation we've been having. All right, and that's basically the end of everything formal. Bill, should I stop sharing so we can see all the faces again?
Yeah, thank you so much. That was very interesting, very detailed.
Okay, thank you. I hope I did well.
Yeah. Probably answered all my questions.
Practice makes perfect.
We'll turn things over to Judy for the questions that she has. Once she is finished with the submitted questions, then we will open up for questions. So no need to put up hands until Judy says, I'm done.
And would you close the chat box, please?
I can do that.
Me?
No.
John.
Okay, I think I'm all right. Go ahead.
I'm just capturing the last one. Would you let Gabe ask his question?
Hi, thanks for letting me in. As I said, I have
Just
to leave. I have to leave real soon. The question is, I used to do my own taxes back when you'd handwrite numbers on forms, and then I got married and I had a company and I started using an accountant. But looking at the process for using these forms, it's not rocket science. It's actually relatively straightforward. But my question is, when I give my numbers and my wife's numbers to our accountant, we get back a pile of forms. And, we pay, I forget what we pay, certainly several $100s for the accountant to do the tax return. And there's a feeling of comfort in outsourcing this and letting somebody else deal with all the details. The question is, do you have a feeling that accountants may make the tax return more complicated than it needs to be to justify what they're doing and charging? Or, if I get back a pile of 15 or 20 different forms from the accountant, is that actually a demonstration that things are really that complicated and I'm better off using a paid tax preparer? I mean, I understand this is a judgment question with a lot of imponderables. I'm just curious on your feeling of accountant versus the tax software.
Well, I paid somebody 1 year to do it for me quite a long time ago, about $500, but this was back in the 1980s. And I got it back and it was basically full of mistakes to the point, I couldn't file it as delivered. So after that, I said, it's a bit of work. Every year you've got to keep up with the laws. The beauty of these programs is they can do very complicated returns. And they'll print out all the schedules and supporting forms and stuff automatically. That's the beauty. You go through this interview and answer all the questions. And I always go look at the end at the forms and just see what they're going to look like and how many there are before I file. I like to know.
So I gather that your experience with the tax software is vastly better than that experience you had with the incompetent accountant.
Yes, that would be my answer. But I may just have had bad luck. I don't know. There are certainly very capable people.
But I guess the bottom line is you've not had any problems in the many years you've been using the tax software.
That's right.
That's a good recommendation.
Yeah. All I can say is if you have a very complicated income situation or lots of deductions, it's going to be work either way. You still have to prepare a lot of data if you go to an accountant and have it organized well, because the notion of a shoebox really isn't legit anymore. There's so much complexity in the rules on these things. That's the other reason I like the tax software, though, is again, the companies that build these programs just know all the tax laws. They work with the IRS to make sure this stuff is accurate and correct.
Here's another question. One of the things that I get from the accountant is a mid-year check on how we're doing on estimated payments. Can you get something like that from this software?
Yeah, there is an estimated tax function. Once as you get out the end past the filing phase where I kind of left off, you can plug in the numbers for your estimated taxes for next year, and it will tell you what the payment should be each quarter. And it'll even print out if you want to mail instead of use EFTPS. It'll print out the coupons and you can write the checks and put those in envelopes and send them. Both TurboTax and H&R Block do that.
Okay, Mr. Goldberg, you're free to go on to your next activity.
Alrighty. Go ahead, Judy.
Okay, In TurboTax, if standard deduction versus limit itemized is unknown, will TurboTax evaluate both, or must you choose either one first?
It'll decide as you get, once your itemized deductions are all entered. Both the programs, as far as I know, will analyze that and say, well, your itemized deductions after, the whatever, phase outs, anything like that. Things like, again, your medical expenses are subject to a exclusion, 10% of your AGI off the top. So it'll figure all that out, and then it'll just say, here's how much your itemized deductions are. Here's what the standard deduction would be. You decide. And if the standard deduction is more, most typically that's what you would use. There may be occasional cases where you still might prefer to itemize, maybe in relation to some kind of carryover. This might come into play if you're running rental income properties and depreciating the property, something like that. There may be some situations there when it makes sense to itemize, but I can't think of many. But yeah, it'll basically, you don't need to know going in which way you're going to go. But if you don't put all your itemized, your expenses in, it won't know what the total of your itemized deductions would be, which is why I suggest put them in even if you're going to use the standard deduction. So, okay.
Yep. This person received a K-1 as a beneficiary in 2022 and thinks she's on her own from now on out until the loss is used up. Am I correct?
Well, that's a hard one again. K-1 from like a gas partnership again, or a real estate investment trust, or I think she's trying to, is that Cheryl? She's waving her hand there.
Yeah, but does she have her hand up?
She sort of was. Cheryl, turn your microphone on. We can't hear you.
And also raise your not physical hand.
Yeah, well,
I'm lowering everybody's hand until we're done with the chat box questions.
That's the chat box question.
Okay. Maybe it was, here, I can put that. Let's see. No, I guess she's not there yet. I don't know.
Just go ahead and answer her question. It's next on my list here.
Okay, well, the problem is I don't know if I can.
Okay.
Seems to be it's involved. Is it a family trust, revocable living trust, or what? I need more information, I guess.
I'll go on to the next one. It's regarding an H&R printing issue. The lower right edge is always cut off. How do I set up H&R program to print correctly?
That's here.
You can go ahead and show them.
I might have to share my screen again. We could take
go ahead. So you're the driver of this.
Okay. Let's go back and all right, the program's still running here. Any setup things would be over here, probably under file or edit. Let's see. Yeah. Oh, I know. Everybody's got their settings somewhere different. Tools. It's not there. I guess it's going to be over here. File, print setup. Yeah, see, and I had made the mistake. I want to set this back to And then see, you can click the properties button here. Once you go to here, choose your printer that you want to print to, hit properties. And then let's see, they say orientation. Okay, that would be portrait landscape. And over here, we've got some stuff, paper size. That might be your problem. If that's not set to letter, it might think you've got a bigger sheet, or, like an A4 or something like that, metric dimensions. Let's see, let me go back out. Let's try it again with my Canon. All right, I'm just curious to see if it offers some different options. Notice here, paper size, letter, source, auto. In my case, I've only got one feeder tray, but you might have more than one. If it's a network printer, you get into that. Maybe that's a question. Is it a Wi-Fi printer? Because that might have some effect. But you notice when I said it was a Canon, I get a different setup screen with quite a few more options. You can control things like, is it scaled sometimes? Let's see, 2-on-1, scale to fit letter, confidential. So there are a lot of different things you can do, but see, it's very much dependent on what your printer is, and I can't give you any real answer without knowing specifically all of the details of your setup. There's a lot of stuff here on my Canon's setup because it's a laser printer.
Okay, Mustafa, make sure that you have the correct printer chosen and go from there.
Right. Just look for, once you picked your printer again, look for the properties button, and then it'll get you into the details of the setup for what you want to do. Okay.
And you can't hurt anything. Can you file a trust return with either of these programs?
I think they asked before, and I'm not sure.
Okay.
That might be one you call their support or chat with their support people and ask them. Or if you've got one of the new AIs, like Bard, ask it. Can I file a, what do we say, a trust return with H&R Block?
I love it. That's our very first answer. Use AI. Outstanding, Tom. I love it.
Okay.
Can you enter penalties for early withdrawal from a CD?
I'm sure, yeah, that would probably be coming on the 1099 int. And somewhere there'd be a line for that if they, basically that's a loss of interest. I don't know though if those penalties are deductible. I mean, they would offset any interest income you got on the CD, but I don't think they're deductible. So it might be a line that says original interest less penalties.
Can you enter the fact that you paid tax for interest from a U.S. savings bond in a prior year?
But you paid it in the current, well, let's see. Can you enter, say it again.
Can you enter the fact that you paid tax for interest from a savings bond in a prior year?
Yeah, I guess, would this be an estimated tax again? Do they, I'm trying to visualize. So this is like,
Judy?
the interest came in late or what?
Let me see if she's still here.
Yeah.
Hold on. Yep, she's still here.
Okay.
Judy, do you know how to unmute yourself so you can answer Tom?
She can't.
Nope.
Nope.
Which Judy?
Herself?
Oh, D.
We have, okay.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Absolutely, thanks.
Okay, I didn't have permission to unmute. The question is, sometimes you're allowed to pay interest as the bond is during the years that you hold the bond. So you could pay a certain amount of tax each year on it, even though you haven't received the 1099 yet. You don't get the 1099 until you redeem it. And I know so what happens is that
I get it now.
all the interest, but then you're able to. Is there a line on this kind of tax software where you can put in, the allowance for the fact that you've paid tax on it in prior years, you've reported it?
Well, I guess my only question would be, again, they're sending you some kind of not a 1099, but you're sort of accruing the interest on your own. Your bookkeeper or something you're doing, Quicken, is accruing the interest. So you know how much interest you got in a given year.
That's correct. That's correct.
Basically,
yes.
Right. And so you're reporting that interest and paying tax. So what you want to do is when the 1099 comes, you want to allow for the fact you've already paid tax on that interest.
That's correct. Now, I know professional tax software, there is a spot where you actually can enter that. I was just wondering if on this, you have the option.
Top of my head, I don't know.
Okay.
I could go fish around and try to find out.
No, that's okay. Thank you.
Probably there's a way to do it. One thing, again, that's nice, at least H&R Block, I think TurboTax too, there's a lot of tax advice. And this new thing, I haven't tried it yet, but H&R Block's got an AI consultant basically online now. You can ask it these questions. And it may well be that would be a good way to get the answer. But I would think if you've already paid the tax, there ought to be some way to offset it when you're entering the data from the 1099 in.
Okay.
All right.
Can you still deduct mileage to medical appointments, etc.?
Yeah, that's one of the things that's in the when you're doing your medical expense deductions, it asks you how much mileage you drove. And then it figures out the mileage deduction for you. Nice. You just keep track of the miles.
Cool. We have a comment. Best to make estimated tax payments online through the IRS website. Much safer than mailing a check.
That's right. And that's what I was talking about with EFTPS. That's run by the IRS, but it's safer. It's almost instantaneous. You get a receipt. You can even go up and log in and print your history of payments if somehow you've lost track. And once in a while, the June payment, it's easy to forget that one because it comes a month early. I've had, you just get all worked up with other things and all of a sudden it's July and say, oh, shoot. You can make those payments late. Just whenever you figure out, oh, I owe, go in and make the payment. You may have a little penalty, but don't skip the payment if you remember in time. Or even if you get all the way to September, make both payments. because they do, the minute you're in that situation where you've got underpayments, your audit probability starts kicking up. It's not what you want.
I want to make sure that every single person that is attending today has an IRS account that you have created yourself with one of the world's best passphrases or fantastic password at a minimum. You want it before somebody steals your ID and sets one up. I gave my, you don't want to get ID theft after you're dead presentation to a group. And at the end, this member raised his hand and said that happened to him. And he's been working on getting the IRS to understand it really isn't him. He's the guy that, it's his account, and a year into it, it still hasn't been resolved.
Mm.
And it was driving him crazy. So please, I don't really care if you ever look at it again. You need to have it set up. You need to tell your kids and your grandkids they need an IRS account. If you go to irs.gov, I believe it says on the first page, psst, you need an account. You need to do the same thing with Social Security. You want your own account before somebody else says they're you. And it's even worse now with AI and stuff like that. I'm off my soapbox. Why are there 2 boxes for the distribution code?
Well, one example, if I guess this would happen if you're divorced or your spouse passes. I had the situation. The second code is something like spouse died. They're a variety. It's a common situation in a lump sum settlement, maybe like an annuity turns into life insurance when the person that annuity was held by passes on. And then the distribution code may have 2. Commonly, it's just 1, but don't worry about it. If you get 2 codes, put them both in. If you get 1 code, just put the 1 in.
How do you calculate estimated tax?
There's a black art, because how do you know what your income is going to be the next year? Particularly when you're getting dividends and interest, and in my case, deciding about these IRA to Roth conversions. You have a lot of control over what your income is going to be. I actually have a spreadsheet that's quite complicated with macros in it. That's a topic for another day, maybe. Judy knows about macros a bit because I built some for her to use for these push articles. And this one, I've got the tax schedules I showed you. I have built macros into the spreadsheet that do those calculations. And then the various types of income. The other thing is, if you're retired, figuring out what percentage of your Social Security is taxable. There's a very complicated form to do that, and I implemented that as a spreadsheet page with all the calculations. So that's the best I can say. These programs will do the work for you, but again, the art is really in estimating what it's going to be. And I've got, as I said, variety of sources of income that I have to keep track of. So it's for me, it's quite a complicated little enterprise. But I'd rather do that than, again, pay an accountant every quarter. Because the way estimated taxes work, if you've never done it, you estimate the taxes you're going to pay for the full year. each quarter, and then you divide that by 4, 1/4, and that's the amount that you're going to pay that quarter. And what can I say? It's not an easy thing to do. If all of you've got coming in is like Social Security and a pension, it's not bad. You know, or if you're working for a wage, they're withholding. You can set up withholding on your Social Security and most of your pensions. And that may be a prudent thing to do. It makes it a little simpler. But you never know. When you've got dividends and interest coming in at funny times, it's very difficult to come out, you know, on the nose. That's why the 4th payment is in January 15th. By then you have a pretty good idea of what the whole year was going to look like. So you make that last payment to try to balance everything out. Okay.
And thanks to Tom, he put 2 macros together that I wouldn't know from a hole in the wall, that for push articles that formats the articles that are submitted so they all have the standard margin single space. And I don't have to do that. I just have to make sure everything's correct, run them through Grammarly, and off we go. And please remember to send me your original articles. I am J. Talor at apcug.org. Can either, one of these soft tax software handle artifact donations to museums where institutions can't assess the value? That was Mr. Goldberg, and he's gone, so you can make it.
Gone. Well, all I can say is they handle donations of non-cash items. Typically, you report it as fair market value. Now, how you determine that is, you get it appraised or whatever, right? And you're taking a bit of a risk if you donate something really valuable without getting it appraised, because the IRS may come back and audit you on that and just say, what's the basis for the number you used for the fair market value or appraised value? But it'll do it. I mean, there's a space in there. I know. Common case, you donate clothing. I mean, that's not high value stuff, but you might, throw out a couple bags of clothing to the Goodwill or somebody. And yeah, you value it.
Really?
$5 a bag, something like that. Yeah. And you can enter that in. It's typically they just say if it's non-cash, enter a description and fair market value.
Thanks.
Okay.
I have 2 more comments. There's an alternative to EFTPS and ID.me. IRS Direct Pay is a simple e-check.
Right. You can do that too. The thing I don't know there is the receipt considered as valid? I would think if it's from the IRS, it would be.
Yeah.
But don't assume that, see, Social Security is using ID.me now as well. And I think this may be something the government is implementing that across the board for any accounts you might have with a federal agency. So one way or the other, it's kind of a hassle right now.
TurboTax Premier has a form on the disk version called What If? It allows me to calculate next year's taxes based on a guess of what my capital gains will be. His question is, does the online version also have it? And does H&R block?
And again, off the top of my head, I don't know. H&R block does have some kind of an estimator, as I said, for estimated taxes. But I think It's another one. You go in and kind of fill in the areas, cap gains. So it's whatever income sources you think you're going to have and deductions. So probably there. I don't know about their online ones, though. I've never really used TurboTax online. I would think they would be virtually identical, though. So
Outstanding. Hey, and outstanding presentation. Even I understood it, and I hate numbers.
okay.
Absolutely. All of my children, except for one, we all hate math.
All right.
But anyway, but this is so clear, even I understand it, which is way cool.
Well,
and
thank you.
I could do this. And if you are affiliated, you would go to a senior center for anything in your area. Be aware they might have free filing for you, and they will do it electronically. You need to bring last year's form with you, or they will say, oh, you don't have that? You need to come back tomorrow and I'll fit you in, or something like that. Ours just changed to that 2 years ago when I showed up without my form, because we never had to do that before. They were kind enough to look them up in your account. And but Google, is there any free online filing in my area? Other organizations, sometimes they're done at the libraries. And like Tom said, they are trained, and all of the ones that do it at the Santa Clarita Senior Center have their own businesses, and they volunteer like 1 day a week to go in and do it for free if you're not ready to bite the bullet and do it by yourself. My daughter, one of my daughter's mother-in-law, she's a math person, i.e. she likes numbers, and she does her entire form, and then she takes it into the senior center and has them do it, and it's always the same, but she doesn't have guts enough to submit it to the IRS herself. Anyway, again, thank you. And we are open for questions. And the first is Mike Ungerman with his new EV as his picture. Very good. You're on.
Yeah, okay. Now I only wish I had a tax break for the EV, but it was made entirely in Korea, and so was the battery. Two comments. The first is, while you were talking about signing into the IRS, I said, I haven't checked that in ages. So I use ID.me for just about everything related to the government. It took me about 3 minutes while the presentation was ongoing to get that set up. Well worth it if you're using ID.me for anything else as well. Second comment, several years ago, I had a terrible audit. I'm going to say it took me a year's worth working with Audit Defense that TurboTax was offering at that time for $36 a year when you filed electronically. We, in the meantime, since then, started using a professional accountant because my wife is an independent contractor. And they offered Audit Defense, and it was very expensive, but we took it. Then the accountant moved to a big professional agency who doesn't offer Audit Defense. And I went back to the taxaudit.com site, and they've now merged with TurboTax and their organization, and it's now intuit.taxaudit.com. So if you're using any service, whether it's TurboTax, private accountant, a service that doesn't offer Audit Defense, I believe it's now $79, and that's the cheapest $79 you'll ever pay if you get involved in an audit, because you just don't want to have to face an auditor across the desk. At least that's my comment.
Good comment. Judy, excuse me for 1 minute. I got to go open my front door. I've got a housekeeper showing up. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey,
I'll give you that link again. It's intuit.taxaudit.com.
John, can you put that in for everybody? And Ungerman, I have been riding around with my oldest daughter and her EV, and the nose, oh shush. Other than the fact that I have to bend all the way over like that to literally to get in, whereas my tacky little Matrix, I just get in like this and sit down. It's fascinating. You don't hear anything, and it's got the best display known to man. And then I get in my little car. Anyway, Mike, you're on. Unmute yourself, please.
Okay, now can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I'll give you before I since our speaker is away momentarily, I'll give you some information that relates to the guy that had to leave early. We had a family that did our taxes for 30, 40 years, and we would get about 5 pages of tax returns. And then the last one retired. He recommended a CPA who we went to, and he uses a software called TaxDome, and they give us 40 pages of output. And this year he's charging me $300, which every year has been a 20% tax increase. So naturally, I'm looking for cheaper ways to get this done. That's why I'm looking into the software programs for TurboTax and H&R Block. But I was going to ask him, one thing was if he had a ballpark figure or what the extra cost is to file a state return. I don't know whether he would, since he says Nevada doesn't have any state income tax.
Oh, I'm back. It was, if you buy the sort of the bundle package where you get the federal plus state, it's about $15 more.
Okay, that's not bad.
So 35 and 50, say $50 for the combo on H&R Block.
Okay,
but TurboTax would be more a little bit, but still not bad.
I've been using it as tax guy for 5 years. If I were to switch over to one of the software packages, would I have to use the ID filing number that they used, or do I get a new one through TurboTax or H&R Block?
Sorry. Could you ask that one again? Sorry.
Okay, I've been using a CPA for 5 years, and he has a certain PIN number. I guess that's what I want to say. If I go to
for the e-filing,
yeah, do I have to get a new? Will they give me a new one if I use the TurboTax?
When you e-file, it asks you to enter a PIN, so you just make one up.
Okay.
So that's unique each year for the filing.
All right. I'm sure I have other stuff, but let's move on to other people and their questions. Thank you.
Okay.
Susan Schmidt.
Nope. You missed out 2 people whose cameras aren't on and been waiting. Bonnie's next.
Uh-oh.
Thank you. I didn't know we needed our cameras on.
You don't, but she didn't see you hand up.
I'm not sure you can see me anyway. I'm on an iPad. So I haven't been able to access chat or anything, but I had a question. And then I did want to say, I do write off some donations, and I use Salvation Army's website. They give pretty much a general idea of how much a skirt is worth and things like that. Mm-hmm. So I think that's fairly reputable. But I did have trouble with that Intuit tax, and I don't know where to write it. I mean, where to find a chat on here, because chat's been closed. So would you mind repeating it for the 5th time about that Intuit tax audit? Is that right? That somebody mentioned. Now that
was Mike Ungerman that mentioned that.
Okay, was that with the TurboTax only, or is that sounded like, I don't use TurboTax, but it sounded like something good to have.
Any tax provider, you can buy it independently. It's intuit.taxaudit.com.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, Barbara Harris.
I just want to make a comment. I run one of those free tax programs within a retirement community of 18,000 people in California. Two comments I think I have. One, if you are a California resident, please be aware that although your standard deduction from the federal is 30,000 if you're married, for the state, it's only 10. So we encourage anybody who uses software, TurboTax, H&R Block, whatever, that just keep in mind the fact that your state standard deduction is considerably less than your federal. So just put in all your itemized deductions, and the application will figure out what is best for you. And as for free tax services anywhere in the United States, you could go onto the irs.gov website, and they will have a list. Put in your zip code. They'll tell you where you can go to get your taxes done for free and any restrictions. You can go to the AARP tax site anywhere in the United States, and they'll tell you where they have their free tax programs. Or you could go to the United Way website, and they will give you a list of all of the free tax programs within your area. That's all I wanted to say.
Can I say Susan Schmidt now?
Thank you. I had a couple of short questions. One, I didn't hear in the discussions of like the 1099s and all the supporting documents, do these applications have a way to actually scan them as you're entering information? So you're scanning the 1099, etc.
They will import PDFs of your prior year's tax return, or I suppose a paper 1099. I don't know if they do optical character recognition, is really what you're asking. Can you scan it in, and will it basically recognize what's an image, find all the little fields? Sorry, I don't have any direct experience to say yes or no on that.
That wasn't actually my question. I wasn't looking for it to be an optical character recognition. I was wondering if it had like a JPEG file, if it's providing an opportunity to have a JPEG file for each of those documents that would say how much your taxes you paid and how much your dividends and all of that.
Well, if it's a JPEG file, then essentially it's a bunch of dots as far as the programs looking at it would be concerned. That's why I said it. Any optical character recognitions takes some form of image file and analyzes all the individual pixels to recognize the text that's embedded in them. And so if you haven't, I just don't know whether these programs are able to do that.
Well, I guess I'm confused then.
If you had last year's tax return in PDF form, it could import that. I mean, the worst, I suppose you'd have to, again, you take the form and you can type in the data. That can be tedious, though. I'm sorry, it's another one. Check the fine print on, the website of the programs and see if that's a feature that they support.
But it will read a PDF, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
But a PDF that's been generated from a document, that it's Jesus.
Susan, you can convert a PDF, a JPEG to a PDF. Just go online and search for,
No, I guess I'm I'm not expressing myself very well. When you do a tax return, you have to send all these documents you've gotten. You have to include that with the return. How do you do that when you're doing it electronically? How do you provide the 1099 electronically?
You don't. See, all of that, because any 1099 you get has already been sent to the IRS by that provider. The link to all that is your Social Security number. So
okay.
The IRS has already gotten that form electronically.
Okay.
Another
question.
Yeah,
another question then. Last year I had H&R Block do my return. Does that mean if I buy the H&R Block software, when I put in there the last year one, it automatically goes out into the cloud somewhere to the IRS and gets a copy of it?
Well, somebody asked me about that here in Sun City, and I checked into it a bit. If H&R Block did your return, at one of the stores, basically one of their tax reps, you will find it online. You can log into your H&R Block account and go look there, and sure enough, the tax return is there. You can download it and then import it into this year's software version of H&R Block. And that actually, I was surprised that works. So that's kind of a nice feature if you're dealing with H&R Block.
Okay, and the last question, how soon will the slides and will we get access to the video as well? The recording?
Next week.
Next week. Thank you very much.
Okay. Susan, you asked something. I'm looking at the chat about oil and gas.
Yes.
Does it cover K1s, in other words? Those are partnership returns that get sent to you. The answer is yes. But some
yes,
of
in the
those
deluxe.
are very complex, so you may have to go into forms mode to deal with some of the items on those K1s.
Okay. My problem is I don't understand what I'm doing. And so that may have all the questions. I just don't understand what they are. So I may be forced to pay for somebody to help me for my tiny little oil and gas money we get. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It has been an excellent program.
Thank you.
Kathy.
Hi. Last year I used TurboTax for the first time. And when I went to print the filing copy or the copy for me, whichever, it was like 79 pages long. And it included triplicates of worksheets, and so what I ended up doing was saving, printing it to PDF and then just going into the PDF file and printing off the pages I needed. And then I had to file the return with paper through the mail. Is there a setting or something that I missed?
Might have been. Generally, you saw when I went to print, there was an option to print a return for filing. There's another option to print a return for your records. And the records return has all the worksheets in it. I think that's probably what happened to you with TurboTax, is you got a lot of worksheets that didn't really need to be filed, where the filing return just has the 1040 and the supporting schedules that are needed. So usually that's an option in the
return to be filed, and it was still 79 pages.
79
long.
pages.
Yeah.
Huge. Well, again, I don't know. Maybe depends on when you start getting into lots of capital gains transactions. Sometimes there are a lot of supporting schedules that go with that. And pretty soon it gets to be a pretty thick pile. I've had years when mine was about 60 pages thick. And what can I say? That's the beauty of e-filing. It'll figure out exactly what needs to be sent and send it. And since you get a free e-file with all these programs, it's probably the best thing to do. So I don't know what else I can tell you. Again, everybody's setup is going to be a little bit different depending on their, how complicated your financial situation is.
It's not that complicated.
Hmm.
And I was afraid it was gonna, if I e-filed, it would send all those worksheets too. And it was like, that's just totally unnecessary.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Well, all I can say is my H&R Block one, I printed to a PDF. I get about 15 pages. And I've got all that kind of stuff that you saw me doing, and quite a few more sources of income than I showed there. So.
Okay.
Cool. Jim Taylor.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Jim, you need to unmute.
Well, see, he's not up there, so I can't tell him that.
Yeah.
Nope.
There, me.
Yeah, maybe he's gone off to get coffee too.
Okay, we'll come back and go to Rosalie.
Thank you for the presentation. I did miss some of it. A couple of comments and then a question. One, I love TurboTax. I've been using it for years and years. They have a great community, so if you ever have a question, you just go up to the help and ask the question. People will answer you. It's great. As far as that state return goes, I don't think there's a TurboTax that doesn't come with at least one state return for free. It just costs you to file it electronically. You can still print it up and send it in. But there was a whole lot of little things in there that TurboTax takes care of, like estimated taxes. My income fluctuates every year. So I just keep my quarters down and then figure out what I need to send in each quarter. And if I don't send in enough, then there's a little thing in TurboTax that lets me go back and tell them how much money I made each quarter. And then they go, oh, okay, well, you sent in enough taxes each quarter so that there's no penalties. But right. my question is, now that interest rates are up again, my computer club actually made interest where it had to be reported. Is there anything in TurboTax or do you know of anything about having to report that or how to report it or any of the electronic things? I'm thinking somebody in the nation knows about having to report the taxes for the.
Is your computer club affiliated with a community association, or are you a standalone group?
Standalone.
How much income did you make?
About $125 is all.
My guess would be probably you wouldn't owe any tax anyway. So you might skate just because you would need to file some kind of a business tax return, I would think, because you're an organization. And there again, I don't think you need to be incorporated, but you see how these things get awfully complicated right away. You're not a partnership. You can't be that. So, and you're not a sole proprietorship.
They have a tax ID number, but no organizational entity.
Yeah. It's another one. I have no experience. We're fortunate here. The Sun City Computer Club is a chartered club of the association. So if we make any interest, we report it, and it goes on the association's corporate tax return.
Okay.
And our interest income is just noise in terms of what they're doing. So
I know our expenses are more than than what we made in interest, but we made enough to get reported for once. So
are you a 501c3?
No, they dropped that a while back because they were tired of filling out the forms. So no.
So in other words, obviously they know you exist, though.
Correct.
Barbara says she has the answer to that.
Okay, so if you have a organization, we have 200 clubs in our community. They all have federal ID numbers. Some of them are 501c3s, some of them are 501c7s, some of them never even registered as that, but they do have an EIN number. If your gross income of your organization is below $50,000, you can log on to the IRS webpage and file what is known as a 990N. And what you do, and you can do it through File Me or whatever, because I do about 7 or 8 clubs a year. You just plug in the EIN number, raise your hand and say, I swear I didn't make more than, I had gross receipts of more than $50,000, sign your name, submit it electronically, and it's done.
You are amazing. So go out to IRS website, sign on.
Yes. Yeah. So what you do is you can even Google. I Google all my questions. So it is, how do I file? You're considered basically a tax exempt, not a charitable organization, but you're a tax exempt organization and you exist for your members. And so you go, how do I file a 990N? And it should just don't go to any of the sponsored ones, go to anything under irs.gov. And it's very simple because I do quite a few of them.
Barb, you are amazing. Thank you for being here today.
Okay, you're welcome.
That's great.
Members helping members.
That's what it's all about. We're going to Joni.
Hi, thank you. That was very informative.
Yep.
I've used H&R Block for a couple of decades, and I find it quite easy. They carry over the previous year.
Yeah.
They do that for you don't have to pay state, so you're not aware of this, but for the state, it'll carry over the information that you documented for the federal. Yes, I put in each 1099, the box onto the box of the H&R Block form. I am snail mailed by IRS an e-file code every year and use that to e-file. It doesn't cost. H&R Block has free support, as you mentioned, by chat, but there's also an 800 number, and there's also a community, as you said, and you could Google that. They advertise free support if you get audited. Knock on wood, I've never been audited, but H&R Block will give free support. Can't beat that price. Also for your donations, you could take photos of it and save it to the cloud. Should you get audited, you've got pictures of what you did, of what you donated. So, and my suggestion is to keep the checkbox open so that people could help answer some of these questions, because none of us know all the answers. That's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.
Gene Olson.
Hi, I have a question and a comment. First, the question. I submitted a question that can you import H&R into TurboTax and vice versa? And
Yes.
also, can you import Quicken into H&R Block?
Answer is yes to all of those. The thing with Quicken is you have to set the Quicken up so that individual categories that you set up get mapped to line items in the tax return. when you set Quicken up, there's a spot where you say, is it a tax item? And if so, what part of the return it goes to. Schedule A, Schedule B, so on, whatever it is. So that takes a little work. Maybe easier, I would just print out the tax report from Quicken where I had already tagged all the items as being items that applied to the taxes. And then it's easy to pick the numbers off of that and type them into the right form. But if you want to do the work to set your accounts up in Quicken with those mappings, then you can directly import.
Okay, I have done that in the past.
Okay.
My comment is, if you know someone that's a little irresponsible on their taxes, or if you fall into that category yourself, you could go to the IRS website and find out all the information that the IRS has on your income and taxable items for the last 10 years. And that will allow you to file all your old returns back 10 years and get refunds or whatever. And that's just a tremendous help. Also, if you lost your receipts this year, you can send in some money to make sure you've paid enough. File something to turn in your tax late. And then you can, in June, the IRS update or around there, the IRS website will update to tell you all the things that the IRS knows about. And you can download them and then do your taxes then, even if you've lost all your receipts. So it's a tremendous help to have that.
That's good to know.
Yeah, an accountant told me that. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks. Bud Gallagher.
Good morning, everybody. Just a comment. These TurboTax and H&R Block Tax are for individual tax returns and not for trusts. If you have a trust, you have to file a trust return, which is separate and distinct, different tax return.
Thank you. Gary.
Yeah, just a suggestion for those people who haven't used a electronic filing system like H&R Block. I've been doing it for a long time. And if you want to get into it, after you've paid someone this year to do your taxes, go ahead and get like H&R Block or whatever tax program you have. Fill it in yourself following all their information. So you're double checking what they did. And then for the next year, you're all set for the next year because everything gets transferred over to your next year's program. And you'll know that your calculations are correct. You don't have to put in social security numbers. You don't have to do any of that stuff because it gets carried over. And then you know that what you've done this year will be correct for the next year. So that'll give you a little bit of confidence in going forward with electronic.
Outstanding idea. Yeah. You make your own cheat sheet.
Yeah, and for people in Virginia, I had a problem last year when I filed my Virginia taxes because the RMD, it was difficult to get my financial people to do the automatic withholdings. So in Virginia, I calculated how much I owed. I was short in the Virginia state tax. I sent a check in to Virginia. After a while, I got back and they said, no, you have a penalty for not withholding enough. I said, but I sent the check in. And they said, well, you didn't send it in as withholdings or something like that, or estimated taxes or something like that. Anyway, they're kind enough to remove the penalty and settle everything. But my point is, in Virginia, at least, don't do that. Have your financial institution like Fidelity or whoever to do the withholdings themselves, and then you won't have a problem. I'm not sure why I had that problem because I did that same thing years before. She explained to me what happened, and I didn't understand it. It was way over my head. But so from now on, I'm going to ensure that my financial institution does the withholdings of my RMD before the end of the year. I don't have to touch it. It's done. So anyway, that's another. Be careful.
John, you're on.
Mute. I held back because I just had suggestions. I just looked it up. It turns out H&R Block software, if you do a web search, it says that you can scan your W-2 with your phone. They have a website, they'll give you a link, and then you can send the W-2 information into your H&R Block software. So this may be something new. I believe that both H&R Block, TurboTax doesn't do that, but TurboTax will import your W-2 information from your employer if your employer is one of their partners. Now, there was also discussion about using spreadsheets. Glenn Reeves, Glenn, first name, Reeves, Reeves, has been providing an Excel spreadsheet of a 1040 for 2 decades at least, free, online. You can go and get that, and if you like filling in spreadsheets, filling in forms, you can put it in there. So I don't know whether he has any VBA macros in there. VBA macros, you can't send something, but you can get a free Excel spreadsheet of a 1040 with places for all of the things that you would fill in if you were doing it by hand for free. Just search for Glenn Reeves 1040. That's all I'm going to say right now. Those 2 things may be handy, but you can use H&R. That's a plus for H&R Block to be able to scan that. I also found that Microsoft Azure now has document information that they have, and H&R Block uses this for scanning. I don't know whether it's available for private individuals or not, or you have to pay for it, but Microsoft has scanning software to scan 1099s and a whole bunch of other kinds of things as well. So if you do a web search for scan W-2 1099, this Microsoft site will come up, and we'll have to look into that and see whether it's free for people and whether it would help anybody for scanning their stuff. One of the most tedious things that I have when I'm sending my tax forms to my accountant is that I make copies of every document, and then I provide a package to them with an index that says, I'm sending you this and this and this and this, and then I can zip it up into a zip file and send it to them electronically. Or at least I have a copy of everything that I've sent to them in case I need to discuss it with them. But that's part of the deal, scanning everything that you have with a scanner. And I guess now you could do it with your phone so that you know that you have a list of all the documents that you're sending. So even if you e-file, you probably don't have to do that. But if you're working with an accountant, you want to give them all of your documents, but you want to keep a copy of everything too, so you can discuss stuff with them if necessary. That's all I have to say. Thank you. And thanks for the great presentation.
Thank you. Good point.
John, thank you. All right. I see no more hands.
Oh, you're missing one.
Where? Oh, Joni Diamond, who's just over the hill from me. She could have yelled at me.
Yes, thank you. We'll have to get together. What fun. Yes, a prior accountant told me if you make your quarterly payments equal to the prior year, as long as you didn't get penalized on the prior year, you won't get penalized on the current year. So it's another way to do it. And then you make up the difference if you still owe money and you're not, he told me you don't get penalized on it. So I'm not an accountant, but I'm just sharing the information I learned. But everybody has some great input. Thank you all.
Thank you to Tom again and everybody for their comments and their additions. Way cool.